What's up, bikers? Welcome to the B1KER Bar Podcast live stream, episode 137. Today, we're talking to Outbound Lighting. If you're not familiar with them, they make mountain bike lights, and now they make road bike lights and gravel lights too. So I guess you could use them for whatever you want, spelunking or whatever. As long as you got a helmet and a GoPro mount or somewhere you can stick it to, I guess, then you're good to go. Nonetheless, let's go ahead and get started with the weekly me telling you guys to follow all the social media stuff. How many times do I have to say this? I'm just asking. Honestly, if you haven't stopped by the social media yet, whether it's Instagram or Facebook, go ahead and do that. It's just me posting pictures talking about what's going on, but it's a little fun extra content, and it's actually a way that I can like interact with you guys. So I know on the podcast, I'm obviously, if you're listening, you're definitely not interacting. Well, you could be like punching your steering wheel or something. But on the other hand, if you're watching on YouTube, I'm not super into like, being super chatty with the comments and stuff. I want to make sure that the conversations go the best. But when I'm posting stuff on Instagram and Facebook, there's all kinds of places we can chat there. So go by and hit the follow button. I like seeing those numbers grow. And it's crazy that like somebody else could be doing like a toy review channel and have 100,000 followers. And I'm giving you guys some free podcasts. Got like 4,000 people on Instagram. So swing by there, do that for me. Those of you guys that are on Patreon, I want to send out a special thanks to you right now. I really appreciate it. Every month I get some new people. Sometimes people go. Everybody has their own reasons, but one way or another, the people that are on there really help make this show happen. And I'm super stoked about that. So thanks for that, for everybody that's out there doing that. It's pretty easy. You can do as little as $1 a month, or you can do $5 a month and get a sticker pack and some cool handwritten letters and extra content too from the biker channel. So I've been doing a lot more videos lately. So all those long cut videos will be on there, and they're fun to watch. I tend to not edit out as much of the F-bombs and the things that may be less than appropriate for YouTube. So they're kind of fun on there. So if you want to go ahead and check that out, $5 a month, or do whatever you want to do. You can do it for free. This right here, hit subscribe or a thumbs up. That's totally free. And those of you guys on the podcast, if you can swing by and give me a review over there on Apple Podcast or wherever you listen, that'd be rad, because it helps the algorithm tell everybody that this is one of the best mountain bike podcasts out there. Just because of you guys and your reviews. The other day, I searched on Google the podcast, and there's a website said top 15 mountain bike podcasts, and B1KER Bar was number 9. So keep doing those 5-star reviews, and we'll see how can we get to the top 5 maybe by 2023. That'd be rad. I'd be super stoked. Anyways, let's go ahead and bring Tom back on. What's going on, Tom?
How's it going?
Oh man, living the dream, right? So those of you guys, there's probably a handful of people that don't know what Outbound Lighting is, and more than me just saying, it's a mountain bike. Like you're probably better off going ahead and giving a little explanation what you guys do.
I've done it a time or two before.
Right.
Yeah. So we're a small bike light company. We recently just increased our staff by 33% to 4 people. So that's cool. We brought Lauren on, and she's been helping out a ton with packaging, shipping, some financial projections, with all kinds of stuff around HQ. So we are doing all of our design is done by me and Matt, the founder. We kind of split mechanical, electrical duties. He has all the optical design in house, and that's really our big shtick. Is we're designing the optics for every product specifically for the type of riding you're doing and where it's going to be mounted. And that's all done unique in-house. So it's not just off the shelf stuff that's made for flashlights. And I think that's where our biggest value add is. But we do the design, we do the full assembly in-house, and we're doing a lot of investment in automation right now so that we can keep our quality control extremely high, repeatability very high, and efficiency, so that we can scale without having to add a lot of staff, which is good because it keeps costs a bit lower despite the enormous cost of investment to get it moving. But it also lets us be a little bit more flexible and not have to have, seasonal staff, because we're very seasonal. Lots of people don't think about night riding in April. They're thinking about going to the beach and getting out in the sun and putting their lights away for a few months. So, now is the busy time where all hands are on deck, and we try to set up our business so that we can handle that and still be able to support all of our employees really well and have benefits and all that. So, we're 4.5 years old, I think, give or take. Just phased out our first product line a couple months ago. So, getting into the next generation of things, and I don't know, I think we're doing all right. We're growing. Customers are happy. The ones that aren't, we make them happy. That's what we're doing.
Right on, man. Are you guys international?
I mean, yes. But that's actually been one of the bigger struggles, is we'll sell lights and ship them around the world, but every country other than the US, you have to pay to import products, right? So shipping overseas, import duties, and then if you deal with stuff like the UK with Brexit and like this massive VAT on top of everything, it gets pretty expensive. So it's hard for us to be really cost competitive. And then also, we pride ourselves on our support for the customers.
Yeah,
and it's really difficult to help somebody out in a pinch last second in Australia.
Right.
So we're trying to get some key distributors and shops, local bike shops in various places, so that if somebody in the UK has a problem, they can go get something shipped domestically in a day or two instead of waiting more than a week for us to ship something.
What I was really thinking about was like the Southern Hemisphere, because like you were talking about, people don't want to night ride in the summer, but on the other side of the planet, like it's winter for them. So
and we've got I think we have at least one customer in South Africa, and we've got a bunch in Australia, but a bunch relative to the rest of the non-US countries. And it's the thing, like Australia is huge, but the population actually is not that big. So night riding, like as a market, we're not big enough to have the cash to go invest in setting up shop there and really doing it the way we want to. So we got to grow a little bit more before we can take on that opportunity. So what I don't want to do is get out there and kind of like outkick our coverage and then fall on our face, and that's going to be worse for the brand than if we wait and we do it right. Plus, our buddies over at Glowworm, they're a New Zealand-based company, and they're right across the pond there. So they do really well with their support, and they're at least a good option for that hemisphere until we can get out there.
Yeah, in my head, I was just thinking, I mean, if you targeted like probably South Africa and Australia and New Zealand or something like that. I mean, I don't know how much riding is there a lot of people riding in like South America? When I look at my demographics, I don't see a whole lot of people watching down there. So
I don't have any statistics on that, but I can say there's definitely pockets of really passionate bikers there with ridiculously awesome terrain. We've got a few customers down in like Bolivia and in Chile, but for the most part, and actually one guy who works for Santa Cruz is based out of Brazil. And so there's people down there, but as far as like the community goes, I don't know. I need to visit.
Yeah. It's always interesting, when you think about some of these other places, like for some of them, it's just really hard even to get like bikes and stuff. Like when I was in Jamaica, I rode down there, and as I was putting my bike together, I snapped the freaking stem bolt. And I was like, you gotta be freaking kidding me right now. And essentially there's no bike shops on that whole island. Like if they want to get tires, they order them online from some place, God knows where, and then they wait like 3 months for them to show up. So it was kind of one of those situations where it was like, well, I'm either riding this bike with 3 bolts in the stem or I'm not riding. So what's the choice?
I'm going to take a wild guess at what you did.
Yeah, exactly.
It's
So
interesting. My friends Aaron and Belen are down in California, and they started Project Bike Love.
mhm.
It's a charity that's intentioned to get women in impoverished areas on bikes, where it can actually have a huge impact on their life and their livelihood, where they can get to school or a job further away. They can carry more produce to market. They can spend more time with their family. It has a big enough difference that they don't have any incentive to sell the bike because the impact is bigger than the cost they can get selling it, right? And so I went with them on a whim for a week down to Paraguay, and my whole job was to be the mechanic and basically teach the beneficiaries how to maintain their bikes, because they don't have bike shops. Like, they're out in places where everything's very remote. They can't order things from Amazon. If they have a problem with their bike, they got to fix it. And so we spent a lot of time, we left them with a bunch of tubes and tire levers and pumps, and basically trained at least one person in each group. Like, all right, here's how you adjust your derailleur. Here's how you adjust the brakes. Here's how you change the rim brakes, the brake pads. And it's totally different world experience. Now, that's not all of South America. That's definitely isolated pockets. And they've actually been doing that even here in like Navajo Nation too. It's, the world's a big place. Anyways, I don't know why I got
No, it's really interesting though, because it's like, it's something that so many of us riders take for granted, that you could just go buy something online or swing down to the shop, or like, for most of America, a bicycle is not a means of transportation. It's a recreational toy, and you forget that in places like, for them to have a bike and be able to go ride down to the market in 20 minutes instead of 2 hours of walking, or whatever it is, it's like, that's a huge difference, man. Like,
it was unbelievable to see it in person too, because they're moved. Like, it makes such a big difference on their lives, and you just can't put that into words until you see it in person. And it's pretty special. So Project Bike Love, shameless plug, but they do good things. And
right on, man. So you guys increased your staff, you're getting bigger. So I'd have to say that's probably from being on the B1KER Bar podcast, right?
Obviously, got the B1KER Bar bump,
Yeah, man. Well, I'm glad to put you guys on the map. I appreciate you guys have been killing it on your own for sure.
Yeah, it's we're growing quickly. And right now there's been a lot of, I talked to a lot of industry people, just friends at different companies, and there's a lot of hesitation right now. Just global recession aside, just the bike industry is kind of coming back to earth from the COVID boom, where everybody got out on their bikes and bought new stuff, and then there wasn't enough of anything. Now sales are starting to drop a bit across the bike industry for new bikes, for parts, for everything. And so everybody's kind of trying to feel out what's going on. And thankfully, since we're such a small company to begin with, we're still growing pretty steadily, so we're not feeling the impacts of that as much. Whereas if like Specialized, they're probably going to see their revenue drop 30% this year. I don't know.
That's crazy.
And that makes a difference on the bottom line. For us, it's we can adapt a lot more easily being smaller and just in this kind of high growth phase. So the more people that learn about who we are, just so they know our name, so that when they do go looking, they at least check us out, the better.
Are you guys seeing drop like that, or?
No, we're still growing. We're probably won't double. Yeah, we probably won't double in size this year. We did last year, but we're still growing pretty healthily across all of our product lines. And then we got our new road light launched, which serves a different audience than our previous road product, which was it was bulky, it was bigger, it wasn't really it was an Aero, so a lot of roadies were not too enthused with it, and it wasn't.
What was the original one called?
The Road Edition.
The Road Edition. So was that like basically like the hangover, or was it like the bigger like one that you put on the handlebars? What was that called?
I still have one here.
I don't know why.
This is our original light was a separate battery pack light. So simple rubber strap and then a cord to plug it in. So this stuck on top of your Aero bars. It worked, and it actually has a cutoff beam, a car headlight, STVZO approved, all that, but it doesn't meld with the bike as well, and you had to have a big battery pack separate with it. And it just didn't really connect with the customers as well. So now we've got the D-Tour, which is all self-contained and smaller and sleeker, and just looks more like a, I don't know, race-worthy product on a road bike.
If anybody's like the original light that he held up, for those of you guys listening, was like a little bit smaller than a Rubik's Cube, kind of pretty square. And new one is,
they're listening. I forgot about
that.
Oh,
it's all right. No, that's what my job is, man. And the new one is definitely, it's shaped more like man, the best thing I can think of right now is like a sideways pack of cigarettes, like that rectangle kind of. But it's like that right about size, right in that size though. And it definitely has, if you're familiar with their hangover light for mountain bikes, it's more of that kind of sleek shape that way, and has good aerodynamics to it. So the one thing that you said that I would say is different than the hangover light is that you said it has that cutoff beam. Can you explain what that is?
Sure. And I'll show it to the people who are not just listening, but basically the simplest way to think of it is your car headlights. You got low beams and high beams, right? Low beams have a cutoff in the beam so that above a certain point, no light goes up. The idea being that you're putting all the light on the road so that you can see where you're going really clearly, but oncoming traffic isn't being blinded by it, because nobody likes having high beams flashed in their face. So putting that into a road bike light makes a ton of sense, because road bikes, you're not constantly pitching up and down over obstacles and things. You're staying pretty level, even if the road is slowly swooping up and down. So cutoff beam does two things. It prevents pissing off everybody in 4,000-pound steel vehicles trying to kill you. And it puts all the light on the road where you can actually use it. So having light up in the air, having a round beam, for example, is just projecting light down and up, can be good if you're kind of out in the woods and you want to see snipers up in the trees or whatever. But on the road, most of that light is just being wasted up in the sky. You want to light up the road so you can see that pothole, not the top of the street lamp, so we can be more efficient. That basically means we can use less power to put all the light down on the road where it actually has value, instead of throwing away half of it in the sky. And that means we can get better runtime from a smaller package while giving you comparable brightness. So the idea isn't to be the brightest possible thing. It's to give you the ability to see what you need on the road most, without just wasting light that is then going to blind drivers.
So is the thought process that I would assume road bikers probably don't need it, but they probably don't need the headlamp then, right?
No, and generally if you just very generally split them up into road bikers, gravel riders, and mountain bikers. Mountain bike, you should always ride in general with handlebar light and a helmet light for a ton of different reasons we can get into. Gravel is a little bit different from road. Where road, especially in high traffic areas, for commuters in particular, helmet light really doesn't add a whole lot, short of being able to look into a pothole or around a corner really quickly. But what it does is the moment you move your head at all, that light is now uncontrolled, flashing people. It's now it's not just pointing directly at them, it's flashing back and forth. So it's almost like a strobe for people all around. So generally speaking, we recommend handlebar light only for road biking. And then we're actually going to put up a package, because we've got our downhill package for mountain biking that's helmet and bar light. We're going to put up a gravel grinder package that has the D-Tour road light on the bars and then the hangover on the helmet. The idea being that if you're riding on the road to get to the gravel or you're in trafficy areas, you turn off the helmet light, and now you've got that glare-free beam that works well.
Mhm.
And then when you're out in the woods and you want to, you know, stare off the side of the road to make sure there's not a bear next to you or something, you turn on the hangover, and now you've got kind of the best of both worlds. So
Yeah.
I think that it's horses for courses, right? You set up your equipment for what you're doing. And yeah, road definitely. I don't encourage helmet lights except in rare circumstance.
Yeah. I did a gravel ride the other day that went into the night a bit, and I was only using the detour on the handlebars, and it definitely did everything I needed to do. Had a really good wide beam, and I mean, you can adjust it down, excuse me, if you want, you know, a little bit more spot on the ground. But I found like myself kind of raising it up so that it just gave me a really good, like good sight line, you know, pretty far out in front of me. And then when you have it set that way, though, it still is like the way that the light projects, because it projects down, you still have a pretty clear like spot of like what's lit up on the ground in front of you, like in a brighter manner compared to other lights that I've had in the past. They're kind of just shining light everywhere, and it's just that you can't really adjust that like focal point that much on them, except for it's like whatever's dead middle, I guess you could say.
Yeah, and a lot of commuter lights in particular, the lower end stuff, it's a round spot, and so everything outside that spot is not lit up. And where that's bad is particularly on like a, you know, if you're commuting in town and there's potholes everywhere or curbs, there's not a lot of light around your front wheel, and you think, oh, I don't need to be looking straight down while I'm riding. But if you have a little bit of peripheral scatter down there, you can see what your front wheel is about to hit without looking down. Then it's a lot safer. And having a narrower, you know, cutoff beam, or not cutoff beam, but like a round spot beam, kind of leaves you wanting in a lot of those areas. So with the detour, we tried to fill in the entire foreground, the middle, and then still give enough projection down the road so that at high speed you can see where you're going straight ahead pretty clearly.
Yeah, you guys definitely nailed it there, because it was interesting to me to look at and see that way, because I'd say in the past the lights that I've used are either, you know, focused spot or a diffused spot, but they're both round. And the way that light kind of, it was, I don't know how I can explain it to people that are listening, is like I had it adjusted so that it was very bright on the ground about 10 feet out in front of me, and right to left it would be pretty good wide range of like 8 to 10 feet of light. And then at the same time, though, it was still projecting out in front of me, where it was just kind of like brightening everything up a good, you know, I don't know, 30 yards out, where you could definitely see enough to like, hey, there's a person up there walking or something like that, you know. And I definitely didn't get all the people like flashing their high beams at me like I would if I was riding with my normal light. So
Sure. Yeah. And that's everybody appreciates that.
Yeah. I noticed though the lights, like the headlights, they look very different. So it's not like you just took the light that you're using for a mountain bike and just made it smaller or something like that. I mean, it looks like there's like two like real big lights in there compared to like the what's the big one for the mountain bike?
Evo.
The Evo. So it's like the Evo here, I mean, if I'm looking at it, it's got like, I don't know, like 10 different lights inside of it, where that one looks like it only has like two big ones or something like that.
Yeah, it's two completely different optic structures, and that's because what we're trying to do with the beam is very different than with the mountain bike lights. So the mountain bike lights, the Evo has 9 LEDs and the Hangover has 6. And the idea is that we wanted a lot of LEDs so that we could be very high efficiency, but more importantly, so that we could really finely tune the beam pattern. But we're not looking for a sharp cutoff there. We're kind of looking for a lot of peripheral scatter, because you don't want any dark spots as your bike or your head moves around on the mountain bike. Because glare, you know, you're not concerned about oncoming riders' glare. If they're coming,
right.
Well, yeah. If you're about to hit each other on trail, you want to see each other, but I don't think that'll be it.
They should see you from pretty damn far away.
with the road light though, that cutoff beam, to get the amount of throw we want down the road, and still have that really sharp cutoff in the beam pattern, we have to have a really small point source. So we actually only have 2 LEDs. They're the same LEDs that we use in the other lights, and then 2 large scoop reflectors. So the idea is that rather than having the LED pointing straight out through an optic that's kind of focusing and diffusing in different ways, on the road light, the LED is pointing down into a kind of like snow shovel style reflector that redirects it and shapes it out. And this is pretty common in automotive headlights, and that's, you know, essentially what we're trying to recreate, but shapes differently for the types of speeds you see on a bike versus a car.
Interesting.
So yeah, it's totally different design architecture, and that's also why like the D-Tour has heatsink fins on the top of the light. It's because the LEDs are directly under those fins pointing down. So that's the shortest path to get the heat out of the LEDs quickly, versus our mountain bike lights. There's fins on the bottom and kind of through the center of it, because the LEDs are on a wall inside the middle of the light. So we got to get the heat out from there. So it's, yeah, we basically start with the beam pattern we need, design the optics that we need to achieve that, and then the rest of the light pieces and fits around that from there.
Right on, man. That's pretty. It's definitely a lot more going on there than what the average person would think of. I mean, do you guys have much problem with overheating? Like on the Evo is such a big light. I mean, you have some like almost like a hood scoop on the bottom that's like, come on, get in here.
Exactly. Yeah, and that's what it's for, is because the LEDs are kind of in the middle of the product, front to back. And so if we have to get the heat out just convecting it through material, it's got to go a long ways to get to the outer shell where air is going across it. So we basically just put a channel through the center of the light so that air goes through it and pulls the heat out directly from the back of the LEDs instead of having to spread it through the shell first. And yeah, the Evo is kind of a brick shit house in that regard. It's perhaps a little bit overdone thermally, but we've got thermal controls and everything. So the idea is that if you're moving at 2 miles an hour, even just a little bit, you're going to be moving fast enough to get enough convective airflow to keep the lights totally stable and cool and fine.
So like if you were using the hangover on your head or whatever, then you were just walking, like say you were using it for a hike, it would still be cool enough.
Yeah, you also wouldn't need the full blast max output because you're walking. You don't need to see 300 feet in front of you at all times. So
it's true.
Yeah, if you have just enough airflow, it'll be fine. But they're not designed to be totally thermally stable standing still like a work light from Home Depot, because that's not the intended application. And if we had made it, you know, thermally stable sitting still with no airflow, it has to be a lot bigger, heavier, bulkier. Nothing about that is good for optimizing it for bike use. So we're trying to make something that works really well for the intended application and maybe not as well for other random uses. But you know, stuff like skiing or jogging or whatever, yeah, they work pretty well for that too. Yeah, and
I saw with the D-Tour, I don't know if this comes in the other one too, because obviously I'm getting my lights directly from you in a non-retail kind of way. But you have this new GoPro kind of mount. Is that something that you guys just developed for D-Tour, or is that come in all of them?
No, I just tossed that on the box so you could have it. Just I wasn't sure what your gravel rig setup was like. It's something we made. We had 3D printed GoPro adapters for Evo for a while. People who needed them, and we just give them out to people as they asked. And then we got that one production tooled so that we'd have a nice glass reinforced nylon mount that works with GoPro mounts and maintains that quick release interface. We just didn't really publicize it until we launched D-Tour, because the primary application for that is D-Tour on a road bike with an out front GPS, and you have a combo mount with like a GoPro mount underneath it. So you can put your GPS on top and you can hang the light underneath it on the same mount. And not a lot of people, there's a lot fewer people on mountain bikes using it that way. There's still some out there. But road bikers, that's a very common application. So once we didn't want to launch D-Tour until we had that, and then D-Tour got delayed by a bunch of supply chain garbage, and we already had that ready. So Yeah, it works with Evo as well. So if you want to, stick an Evo on your helmet, you can use that adapter for it. I wouldn't recommend that, but
that would be. I feel like that would get to your neck after a while, but I
yeah,
don't know. It sounds like something I'd be willing to do.
I mean,
Just to
for
try.
science, right?
Right. So, yeah, I mean, so if somebody wants one, they just go on the website and it's a couple bucks or something.
Oh yeah, we've got that available in our accessories now. It used to be like when we were 3D printing stuff, we try to be pretty quick to react to customer feedback and trends and whatever. And we've got some industrial level 3D printers in house specifically so that we can make random custom attachments when needed. Now, that's not a service that we necessarily publicize because there's only 4 of us, and that takes an inordinate time and all that. But like early on, for example, with Evo, there were a few people that only had the option to mount it with a GoPro adapter. We didn't have that, so I printed some up and sent it to them, and one of them took a crash and broke it, and so I looked at it and beefed it up in certain spots and tweaked it a little bit and printed some more. And just as people asked, we would just send it to them so that they had a solution rather than just saying, sorry, we don't have anything for that.
No, that's really rad. What material do you print in when you're doing that?
We use nylon 11 right now, or sorry, nylon 12. So we have a Formlabs Fuse SLS printer, so laser sintered powder. And what that does is it gives us really, really nice finish quality to the point that unless you're the kind of nerd that pays attention to this stuff, you wouldn't know necessarily that it's a 3D
No, those powder ones are pretty sick. We have some at work too, and I'm like, oh wow, that's freaking a way different level of detail than what I'm getting with like Pet G at home,
Oh yeah. Any of the FDM printers, like they're good for hobbyist level stuff and making quick and dirty things, but I wouldn't feel comfortable not necessarily sending that to a customer or charging them money for it. So like, right, if we're going to do this, we need to have something legitimate quality and really homogenous. So yeah, the Formlabs has been super helpful for prototyping. We actually use it a ton for making jigs for our production tooling. It's like we've got a soldering robot that does soldering for us. And so we made a tray with a bunch of 3D printed holders that will hold 25 Evos in a tray at just the right angle. So the soldering robot can come in, solder the battery pack in, move on to the next. And so all we have to do is load up the tray, put it in the tool, press go to the next tool, do the same thing, inspection afterwards, and done. And that's all stuff we can make the tools to run the tools in-house, which is super nerdy, but also really fun.
No, it's really cool, man. I'm going to get off topic on this 3D printing thing because it has my attention lately, man. I put it off for a long time because it was one of those things where I'm like, man, that looks like something I'd really get into. And we were talking before the show, like I get hyper focused on shit, man. So I know that when something like that's coming my way, I have to be like calculated about when I do it because I'm going to go down this freaking rabbit hole and it's just going to be like, see you later, Rob. He's gone for like 3 weeks, so I broke down like a couple of months ago and bought a little Prusa FDM and, dude, it changes the way that you think about things in your life. Instead of being like, man, that sucks, I can't find this little doohickey on Amazon that I want. You're like, fucking hey, I'll just make that thing, go ahead.
No, it's like that's my favorite thing about it is like I need a really unique custom thing that may not even exist, and if it does, it costs a bunch of money, and I have to have it shipped here. I'm just going to print it real quick, and I'll have it later tonight, and then I use it one time for that one thing, and then cool.
Like it's just like so many things that I wouldn't even thought of. Like this little bracket that holds my Rode mic onto my boom stand like broke a couple days ago. And apparently it's like a design flaw from Rode. You can call them up and they'll send you a new one, right? But in the meantime, what are you going to do? And then there's like, people are like, oh, here's a file, just print this. It won't last, but like it'll work for right now. It's like, dude, freaking 30 minutes later, boom, put my microphone back together. It's like that's super rad.
Oh man, there was all kinds of people doing that for like Shimano brake levers when Shimano is out of stock of everything for like 9 months, and you like break one on the trail in a crash. People were 3D printing brake levers just to get them by because they couldn't get
Right.
a replacement. It's like, yes, this is the perfect application of this technology.
Yeah, it's really rad, man. Like I didn't think about it more than like people just kind of making silly things or prototyping or something like that. And whenever I first bought mine, I was watching one of the videos, and I think it was the guy from Prusa that was talking, and he's like, basically their idea is that someday, who knows where it is, how far into the future, but it's like you get, you know, you go on Amazon, and instead of like buying these like things, like let's just say it's like plastic utensils, right? You know, instead of buying a set of 25 of them, you know, you just hit print, and then it's like poof, there they are. You know, it's like, what the hell? There you go, you know.
It's almost like a trope in every sci-fi movie where they press a button and whatever they're thinking about appears. But
Yeah.
I mean, it's a little ways off, but
Yeah.
we're getting close to that reality, which is super cool.
And with those different mediums, like what you were talking about, like the powder one that you have, and there's the other one that's like a laser in water or something, like it's like in liquid, it's kind of, and like I imagine a day where there will be a system where it has basically like all those different abilities, you know. And so like you'll be able to print the freaking titanium piece, or you'll be able to print the plastic piece, or you'll be able to print this high detail thing, and it'll all be there sitting, you know. It'll be like when you move into a house, you know, you buy a refrigerator and a stove and a printer, you know. It's like it'll get that way. And it's really interesting to think about how many things that could just be like manufactured in your own home that way. It just blows my mind.
Well, and it opens up so many possibilities from the engineering perspective too, where it's not just, I can use a nylon 11 that's super pliable and bendy. I can use a nylon 12 that's more rigid but brittle. I could use the PETG, which is really inexpensive and lightweight. I can use silicone-based resins that are actually like 50A durometer. I can make gaskets from them. But then you can also, because it's additive manufacturing, it's not subtractive. You don't have to start with a raw material or like a casting where you can't cast cavities, right?
Yeah.
Have a way to break things apart, and you can't injection mold something that's completely enclosed because you have no way of removing what's inside of it.
Right.
With additive manufacturing, you can make something that is completely enclosed and super strong with like a lattice structure inside that's lightweight and adding strength, but mostly air cavity. Like you can do so many cool things with it. And it, like even Reeve is doing that now with their, Atherton's been doing it for a little while with their titanium lugs and carbon fiber tubes, but Reeve's doing that now with steel lugs for the SST. They're 3D printing the dropouts and the bottom bracket junction and the pivot junction so that they can just weld them up to steel tubes. And they've got really intricate structures inside to make it so that it's not just steel, but it's also lightweight, where they couldn't do that with a typical cast part or a machined part.
Yeah. It's kind of crazy. It'll be interesting to see how it changes things into the future. Someday you might just be printing your bike, like print a new frame, just like, all right, here we go.
Yeah. As things get, as that technology just gets better and things get easier to manufacture and cheaper, like from a tooling perspective, there's going to be more of that everywhere. Honestly, if we don't have as many opportunities in a product like ours that's so small and to really employ 3D printing in the product itself. But without 3D printing, it would take us way longer to both produce, to do the testing, the prototyping, do all the assembly. It's a game changer for sure.
Yeah, the prototyping side of it is just phenomenal. I work for a robotics company, and we use printers for prototyping, and as well as even our manufactured RV has parts on it that are printed. It's a $10 million vehicle, and it's still got stuff that's, it's not printed like what you would do at home, but it's interesting that there's stuff like that. So
Yeah.
another thing I was going to say about this mount that you mentioned that we were talking about earlier, kind of got us on the 3D printing, is you said, not a lot of mountain bikers have that Garmin mount that kind of puts it out in front. Mm-hmm. However, P&W makes a stem that has a GoPro mount like built into the stem. I don't know if there's any other companies that do that, but this would be super clean in a situation like that, because then it's just like you unscrew it and boom, there you go, your light's off.
Yeah.
So
I've actually got one of those on my hardtail right now.
Oh, nice. Yeah, I have one behind me if anybody's watching. There's one right up there. But yeah, you mentioned this quick release system, and I think that's also another thing that's pretty cool that I really like about your light is, you put that mount on your handlebars, but the actual light itself kind of pops off really easily and goes on there super snug. It's not like anything that you have to worry about it coming off at all. That's something you guys just came up with on your own, or did you kind of just use some idea from somewhere else? Or
we kind of used a patent that expired 40 years ago.
Oh, nice.
So any of the photographers out there will be familiar with the Manfrotto mounts that are, camera tripod mounts. So you basically have a base on your camera with some chamfered edges that will slide in, and it'll push down on this brass plunger that releases a lever that snaps closed to hold the foot in place. And it's big, it's bulky, it's clumsy, but it works really well for that application for quick on and off and keeping it super snug. So we basically took that concept and miniaturized it and kind of dialed it in for where we wanted to be able to situate the lights. And so that you have essentially one hand ergonomics where you can reach in, grab the light with 3 fingers, pull up the lever to release it, and just slide it out. So you don't have to have 2 hands pulling tiny plungers or bending a thing out of the way to snap this thing off. And most importantly for us, because that lever is a cam interface, it's ramped. What that means is the lever closes as far as it needs to hold that light in place, to hold the foot of the light. And if that interface wears over time, then the lever just closes a little bit further to take up the slack. So you don't have wiggle, because wiggle, like if you've got a rubber strap light on your bike,
those
it
suck.
flops around and it moves, and you see that shaking in the beam pattern, particularly on rough trails. And it's one of those things that if that's the only thing you've ever ridden with, you might not realize how distracting it is until you go use something that doesn't do that. And you're like, holy crap, I can't believe I've been riding with this floppy piece of crap for so long. And yeah, like a lot of other quick release interfaces, they're like bendy plastic levers where you slide something on and it snaps in place, but it's got play in it. It doesn't cinch it tight. And as it rattles and moves around, it just develops more play. So you can never have it really like firmly mounted on the bike. It's always just going to be wiggly, and it's just going to get worse over time. So that was one of the key features of this design we liked, where it didn't develop play and wear down the same way.
I noticed you guys also changed the handlebar clamp for the Evo as well. The original one I had, you kind of just locked it onto the handlebar where you wanted it, and if you wanted to move it up and down, you either left it loose enough that you could move it, or you had to take a tool out to do that. But now you can lock it in, and then there's like a little micro adjuster that I can use to make the beam go up and down.
Yeah, and that's I'll give you a quick story in the background of how all that came to be. The shells on Evo and Hangover up until very recently. Evo's been a cast magnesium lower shell since the beginning, and with that we had a cast aluminum mount. We wanted it to be heavy duty, to be really strong, and all that. And what we realized is that and that angle adjust interface, we had it basically a flat friction face. The idea being that you could tighten it down enough so that it's not going to move on the trail, but loose enough that you can still adjust it by hand without a tool. That was kind of the sweet spot we were shooting for. Turns out that manufacturing tolerances for cast metal with powder coated surfaces are just shit. And like we got a wide distribution of fit between those two parts, and the stuff right in the middle worked perfectly. The stuff on either end just didn't, and that was a problem. And then we found with the aluminum mounts, we had to have rubber on the inside to prevent scratching up carbon bars and stuff like that, because nobody likes that. And then we didn't want to damage bars in a crash. Like if you crashed and hit your light front head on into a tree, we didn't want the mount to damage your carbon bars. So we effectively had to build in a crumple zone to the mount so that in a crash, the mount would break without causing worse, more expensive, higher safety risk damage.
Yeah.
It means the mounts are really brittle. And we started shipping them out and started getting some complaints, and immediately started redesigning it to switch to glass reinforced nylon. The idea being that we can get the stiffness we want with the glass fiber fill, and we can kind of tune that so that it's stiff enough to not like flop and bend, but still have the ability of the nylon to bend under impact rather than snap. Then we could eliminate the rubber gasket under the clamps, because it's not going to damage, nylon's not going to damage carbon bars in any situation. We can beef up the hinge where we had the kind of crumple zone in the aluminum design. So now that's no longer, we don't have to have a crumple zone. We basically design it so that you hit your light head on in the front, the mount bends back until it hits the stem, and it's fine. Now, that doesn't mean they're invincible. Nothing like is invincible. People find creative ways to break shit all the time, but it's a lot more robust now. And when we did that, so the angle adjust you mentioned 10 minutes ago when you started me on this tangent, that was something we added in a thumb screw because people hated having to take a tool out. 2.5 mil screws, which not a lot of people had. Like specialized little multi-tool doesn't have a 2.5 mil in there. So
the other thing too is like with a lot of the tools nowadays, like some of them are just super small and they work for things that have a really easy path to get to. But there's a handful of things that I've been trying to fix on my bike on the trail that my multi-tool is just too small to like it won't fit in the spot right, or I can't turn it right because it's too bulky another way. And so I think the thumb screw there is like, when I saw it, I was like, this is really rad. Like I really like.
We get more comments about that than anything else about the mount. And it's something that I actually initially was not super excited about putting it on there because I thought it was kind of bulky looking. And on my bikes, like I always just set the angle perfectly and I just left it there.
Yeah.
But we're not selling stuff to me. We're selling stuff to average people who aren't testing lights all the time. So turns out having that quick on the fly adjustment made a lot of people very happy. And thankfully my partner, Matt, overruled me and said it's going on every mount no matter what.
Yeah, no, I think my knee jerk would have been similar to yours. Like I would have initially been like, dude, just don't tighten it up so much. Like make it so it spins sort of like a brake lever. Like when you hit the ground, it'll move, but otherwise it doesn't, And so I totally would have had the same perspective as you, but then using it actually like I was like, okay, this is handy. Like,
well, and the other thing it allowed us to do too was we put teeth on that angle adjust interface. So you've got 5 degrees of adjustment, 5-degree teeth essentially.
Yeah.
So that it's locked in place so that friction, we don't rely on the friction interface anymore, because what happened with that is if that surface wasn't perfectly planar or the coating was just off, like we wouldn't get enough grip and you just couldn't tighten it up enough no matter what you did.
Yeah.
Or we'd have to put like fiber grip, paste on there, like you use on carbon frames of seat posts and whatnot. And that's not okay. So we added teeth. So now you can just loosen it a little bit, find the tooth you want, lock it in place, and now you don't have to worry about it slipping or moving on hard riding.
Yeah, no, that definitely was handy. So it's interesting. It's little things like that I'm sure take forever to make changes in your product. And then like people just don't really think about it. They're just like, oh, cool amount.
I thankfully Lauren is now on board, and she is a huge help answering emails, but in particular other things too, but that in particular for me, because before that it was me answering every single customer email that comes to us. And I enjoy that because I get a lot of really useful data. I don't enjoy that because we get people that just assume things.
Yeah.
And when people assume things about a product that we put a lot of time and effort into every little detail on,
Yeah.
it can be frustrating to try to explain. No, actually, the reason we designed the teeth with that specific profile, like, people don't really need that level of detail. They just want me to solve whatever problem they have. So I try to just get over myself and just solve problems. But yeah, everything we're doing, we're trying to be really quick to react. If we see a problem in the field with something that might be a problem for somebody else, we fix it in the design. We just did that actually recently with
how big are the batches that you guys order? So like how quick can you be like responsive to a change? Like, do you order 1,000 at a time or 500 at a time, or?
It depends on the part. And thankfully the stuff, the parts that don't change very frequently, like our batteries, we're going to order, depending on the pack, 5 to 10,000 of those at a time.
Yeah. Because you get a better price the more you buy. But it would suck if you printed, or you got like, 10,000 of those mounts made, and then you're like, well, this sucks. You have to eat it then,
Yep. Yeah. And so actually something I was doing earlier today is I was desoldering a bunch of these drivers from our hangover boards because we made a change to the shell, but we still had like 150 of these old boards left, and the old boards don't fit in the new shell.
Right.
Just right. So I'm trying to salvage what we can from that because I don't want to throw away 150 good drivers.
Yeah.
And it's the same way with all the other parts. Like on Detour, we made a couple of changes to the shell very quickly after we launched it. We started getting customer feedback, and we're like, okay, we can make this better for the next run. So we rolled it in immediately. We didn't, we ordered 1,000 shells, and we got those, and we got to reorder again. It's like, all right, well, we need another 500, but that should be enough to get us by until we can get this change rolled into production. Because it takes time. If we need to change a mold, we've got to recut the mold. We've got to validate those parts. We got to get through production. Like it's, a couple months potentially.
And those molds are expensive. They're not like, it's not like you're like, hey man, I want to change the way this is. And they're like, yeah, no problem.
Yeah, exactly. It's not like, oh, sure, I can roll that in for you. It's it'll be $6,000 and it'll take 2 weeks to do it. I'm like, okay, so I better be really sure that I want this and that it's worth
it. You printed the hell out of that thing before you sent it over, I'm sure.
And even still, shit happens. Sometimes we miss stuff. Sometimes we see the way things are getting used in the field. And you're like, you know what? We can just make this better for that application. So we'll make a tweak to the mold mid-cycle. And we do rolling changes like that all the time. So we, for hard parts for shells and things, we're not going to order more than 1,000 or 2,000 of those at a time because we know we're making small improvements here and there where it's not like, hey, here's a new product. It's just better. And we want to get that into as many people's hands as possible and not either throw out parts that are perfectly good or, have to pay a lot of like scrap cost kind of thing. So production is fun. And we've only got, 3 main product lines and then some accessories. When you start getting into a company where it's, like you think about just like Fox alone, one fork, the 36 comes with different offsets. It comes with different wheel sizes. It comes with different dampers. And then there's the 38 and the 34. And then there's some different tube taperings. There's different break offset. Like everything is a little bit different. The number of SKUs if they need to change one thing about a casting, it's not just one casting. There's several that they may have to make those changes on. It's a lot to keep up with, and it's a lot of cost and time. It's like you got to do things right from the beginning. That's the role of the story.
And that's why your fork costs $1,000.
Exactly.
Right. So I think I saw something that you guys like changed some like manufacturer or something that you're using to something in the States or somewhere else?
Yeah, well, actually, that to your point about like how long it takes to make those kinds of changes in production to get a change of design, we made when we made Detour, because of the kind of the targets we were trying to hit for weight for road bikers, where they're counting grams and that sort of thing. We wanted to use a different material because we really just didn't like the feel. Like the cast magnesium works pretty well for what we're doing, but we don't like the tolerance and the quality control. Essentially, it's we're scrapping a lot of parts because they just don't meet spec, and we can make that a lot better if we can go to injection molded. But we don't want to make plastic lights because plastic doesn't conduct heat, and it's it feels cheap. So we started working with a company based in the US that actually produces raw material in Kentucky, and they're making a boron infused nylon, essentially a thermally conductive polymer. So we're trying to kind of bridge the gap between metal and plastic, where we can get the super high tolerance, perfect surface finish of an injection molded part from plastic, and we get plastic durability, but we can get the thermal conductivity and the feel of metal. So it's technically plastic, but it's also partially metal. So when you pick it up, it's cool to the touch. You know, like when you pick up something metal and it's cold in the room, the metal feels cold, but a plastic doesn't. Wood is a warm touch material where you touch wood and it doesn't necessarily feel cold like metal does because it doesn't conduct heat as well. But the shell actually, it doesn't feel like metal, but it doesn't feel like plastic either. It's really unique. And what that essentially allows us to do is now we're getting raw materials from the US, not from somewhere else in the world. And the lighting in here is terrible.
At least the people that are listening can't tell.
Yeah. Lighting. I mean, I'm in Olympia, Washington, and it's fall, so it should be cloudy and rainy every day forever. And it's now like bright sunlight right in my eyes here. Anyways, so we can make the shells lighter weight as a result. We can have better fit and tolerances across the board, better quality control. And we have enough thermal conductivity so that we can run the LEDs really hard. But for bike lights, for example, the limiting factor for us is not how hot the LEDs can be. It's how hot the case gets before you can feel it and think, the light's too hot, something's wrong. So we have to limit what the LEDs are running at in our magnesium lights quite a bit, because it transmits heat really well to the outside of the shell. And if you feel like you're about to burn your hand, you're going to be pissed off. So we're running the LEDs at 70, 75 degrees Celsius in the standard hangover and Evo. And then with the new shells, we can actually push them over 100 pretty easily without the outside of the shell getting as hot. And so we're actually using the fact that it's less conductive as an advantage because of the type of application where we know we've got convective airflow to pull the heat out pretty quickly.
So essentially what you're saying is you can make the lights brighter now.
We can make them brighter, we can make them lighter weight, we can make them better quality, all of the things. And we're doing that with a facility. So the material's coming from Kentucky, and we're actually getting them molded in Michigan, and then we bring them in-house in Illinois so we can assemble everything. So from start to finish, material to finished product, that part of the product is all domestic now, which is awesome for a number of reasons, but not the least of which being that the company molding the stuff for us in Michigan, they work with automotive vendors where they might go through 10 or 12 revisions in a mold before they get to production. So they're used to making iterative changes. So we changed our hangover lower shell to this thermally conductive material, got them to start molding it. Everything looks good. We mold 1,000 of them. We start getting them out there, and had a couple people take pretty significant diggers to their heads, like cracking your helmet kind of crashes.
Yeah, that's a big one.
So they broke their helmet, and they broke the light as well. And we were seeing where it was breaking on the shell. And so we said, well, we can make that stronger. So let's make a change to the mold real quick. And so we made a couple of tweaks, and we're able to basically just stop production. They're in the middle of a run, so they'd run 200 more shells. So it's stop, make this change, and then go back and start running again. And they can do that, and they can do it quickly because they're stateside. It just took us a really long time, honestly, to find a vendor that had the capability and, more importantly, was willing to be that flexible on stuff like that. Because, you know, we've had some overseas vendors that are fantastic, really high quality. They work quickly, but they're still halfway across the world. Now you've got vendors. Now I've got vendors that are here in the same time zone as us, where they can make changes quickly and have it there the next day, kind of thing. And previously, we had tried some American vendors previously for other parts. You know, like our electronics initially, when Matt started the company, we're with the shop that was like, oh, if you need to make any changes or do anything quickly, then it's going to be 6 to 8 weeks, or you're going to have to pay several $1,000s for an expedite fee.
Yeah.
It's like, well, we can't afford to do either of those things because now we're going to be out of stock for 2 months, or we're going to lose money. Like, it was bad. Now we've got a shop down in Gilbert, Arizona, doing all of our electronics, and you know they're expensive, but they're price competitive. They're competitive enough that I'm willing to pay them the premium, because if we have something like, all right, hey, we need to change this program right now. I need to change something in the firmware. I'm going to send it to you. Reprogram all these units before you send them to me. Like, they do it that day. They're responsive, and that is the biggest thing for us, particularly during the pandemic, where
I think a lot of companies learned that during the pandemic. I think that there's a good possibility that you see a lot of things kind of coming back to the US, just because of people realize how volatile their businesses were, being, dependent on things that are coming from overseas.
Yeah.
Who knows? Maybe people just forget after a year or two too. So I don't know.
People's memories are short.
At the end of the day, the cheaper prices are nice.
Yeah. It's funny. We're actually the direct beneficiary of that exact issue, because we're small, so we don't have like cargo ships full of product all the time, right? We're, a couple thousand here and there. But because we're assembling in-house, that means we can turn up the knob when we need to. But not to name names, but Knight Rider launched a new product in August of 2020. They didn't actually start shipping it until September of 2021. And a big part of that is that they're drop shipping containers on boats across the ocean, and they got stuck in canals and shit. And so they had products sitting on the ocean for 4 months they couldn't do anything about. And we're like, cool, we've got parts here. We're going to assemble lights and now we can sell them. And we could just react a lot more quickly that way. So, for companies like Specialized, that's tough because they're enormous and high volume. Like they might have to stay overseas for a lot of their manufacturing. But for smaller companies, like, honestly, it's worked out better for us, paying a little bit of a premium here and there. So I don't know.
Yeah, we used to use gimbals a lot in my POV mountain biking space, and the first one I bought was a Chinese kind of, I don't know, let's just call it the other side of the ocean brand. And whenever I ran into a problem, they were like, yeah, we can fix this, but just go ahead and ship it back to us. And it's like, okay, so it's going to take 2 weeks to get there. You're going to work on it for a week, and then it's going to take another 2 weeks for it to get back. And I ended up starting to buy these other ones from this company, actually, oddly enough, named Evo, up in Oregon. And it's like, they were a little bit more expensive, but I could get that thing shipped up to them in a day. Exactly. They knock it out real quick and get it back to me, and I could have my gimbal back within a week. And that to me was really rad. So
I mean, and we try to do that too. Like our, that first generation product I showed earlier that we phased out, we don't have, normally the way we handle warranty stuff is if somebody has an issue, we immediately send them a new product with a prepaid shipping label to send the old stuff back to us, so that they have the least amount of downtime, and they can very easily toss the old stuff in, put the label on it, and drop it off and be done. They don't have to fill out a form online and send it back and then wait for a week for me to get to it. And the other side of that is that I have more time to really look at it properly, figure out what failed and why, and roll that into our design. But with the old stuff now, somebody in the US has a problem with one of their older lights. I send them a shipping label. It gets to me in 2 days. I can usually make a quick repair and send it out the same day. So, less than a week they're out, and they don't have to pay any cost because it's not going overseas and all this.
Yeah.
It's a lot.
I know.
It's also
Yeah,
why getting into the
think
global environment is tough.
Yeah. I think those will be problems you have to overcome at that time. But at this point in time, it's definitely like a competitive advantage that you guys have in that manner. So it's definitely something to think about. With purchasing something like that. I mean, very well, like, if you're dealing with a different company, it could be a fair amount of time for you to get some kind of warranty replacement on something. So it's as a consumer, these are the things that me, as I've gotten older, realize that, oh, it's worth extra money. If that's, if this other product is more expensive, but they have this kind of support, I'll pay it, because it's like, it is more irritating to be without your product that you know what I mean, because of some kind of issue, you know what I mean? So
yeah, if you're off your bike because your shock blew up and Fox's service is 2 months out, and like, that sucks. And I think that pandemic made that a lot more obvious to a lot more people, because every company across the globe was struggling with that. We had plenty of issues getting parts, and we still have that issue getting parts supply of things. It's only just starting to calm down, and even still, we're getting gouged on stuff like the lithium-ion charger chip in there is, costing us $4 more per chip per light than it did before, just because, do you want parts or not, right?
Yeah.
But now that consumers are kind of not used to it, but pretty much every biker has had an experience now of breaking something on their bike and then not being able to get a replacement for months. And that affects the way you make your product decisions too, right? If you know you can get support quickly, it may be worth the premium. And we've tried to make it very clear, if you buy something from us, then we stand behind it, because that's what we want from, like, all of our, like, we ride too. Like, I want my bike manufacturer to support me if I crack it in half somewhere doing something dumb.
Right.
Not that that's happened.
Yeah. No, I hear you, man. But shitty things happen, dude, out of nowhere. I just a couple weeks ago had the blessing of doing one of the shittier climbs around here, about 5 miles away from my car, pretty much all climbing to get to where I was at. I was within a half a mile of the top of the hill, where it's going to be like all downhill all the way home, right? Like, good times, nothing but grins. And I freaking go to lay down a pedal strike, and something just pops. I'm like, what the hell was that? Like, I didn't even know what it was. I was like, ooh, that was weird. Like, I know something just went wrong. So I get off my bike and I look, and like, at first glance, like, everything looks fine. And then I realized that one of my pivots, the axle, like, broke. Like, and instantly I knew there's zero way I'm fucking fixing this on the trail. It was like, sit there for about a minute and just accept you're walking 5 miles back to your truck right now.
Like, you're going through the thought in your head, all right, if I find a stick that's the right diameter, I can kind of shave it down with a rock. Like, no, you're done. It's over.
The only thing I could think of is, like, man, if I had a strap or some zip ties or something, I could maybe, like, zip tie my swing arm to my down tube in a certain way. But I didn't have any of that shit. So it was like, what are you thinking about these options for, dude? You have no options. Just walk.
You didn't bring yourself some spare pivot bolts?
I know, right?
I used to ride with a buddy in North Carolina who would bring, like, spare seat and spare crank arms in his bag. Like,
oh my God.
It was over the top. Where do you draw the line, right?
I fell into that rabbit hole for a while, man. I used to carry so much shit in my Camelback, just all kinds of stuff. I would have had zip ties. Like, I would have definitely had zip ties. And the one thing that I didn't have that I used to carry I was thinking that day that I might put. Do you know what 550 cord is?
Yeah.
Okay, so like some people know it by that name. Some people know it by like paracord, but basically it's like super strong nylon string-ish rope. And I used to have a bracelet that was made out of that like you could take it apart and use it if you wanted. And I was like, you know what? If I had that bracelet on that day, I would have been able to probably like rig my frame enough to like, maybe I wouldn't have been able to ride it, but I would have at least been able to like sit on it, maybe the flattish spots, and like move faster than just walking, you know?
That makes an enormous difference when it's a 5 mile out.
Yeah. So the one thing I will say though that I was stoked about was I had an issue before where like my wheel, I broke so many spokes that the wheel dished into the frame, and I actually had to carry it because otherwise it would have just like rubbed the carbon raw, you know?
Oh, sure. Yeah.
So I was stoked that I wasn't carrying the bike. At least it rolled.
Oh man, that reminds me of a ride I did out in Colorado. We were there with a big group of people on a weekend trip, and it was in Durango. Buddy had a Trek Slash and had Bontrager carbon wheels. They were pretty good until they weren't. He cracked one of the rims, and it cracked through the rim, so it had like the thick, heavy. I don't know if you've seen their rim tape, where it's like a molded piece of plastic. It's not tape.
Okay, yeah, Envy has those too.
Yeah, and so it's a huge pain in the ass to get off the rim, but it was still bleeding air, and he couldn't get it to hold air. So we had like hockey tape wrapped around the tire and rim together, and then because that wasn't holding in the pressure well enough, we actually had multiple zip ties around it. But then the zip ties were still sticking out. We didn't have a knife or anything to cut them down, so they were like hitting the frame as they were rolling. Nice. And he's like, I'm not going to destroy my carbon frame with zip ties. Right. But he had a bowl and a lighter, so we just sat there with the lighter, melting the zip ties, trying to pull them to get them to.
Oh Lord!
To rip apart. We're like, you know what? I think it's about time to call it. Like, we might just be done for this.
Yeah, sometimes though, man, you can do some trail side ingenuity, man, and just like change the day, right?
Yep. Yeah, it got him down the hill. He rode down the hill. Got a few scratches on his frame, but he's all right.
Yeah. Well, I think those things build character, right?
Exactly. What doesn't kill you.
Right. So, something else you guys got going on, you have a new hangover, right?
We have the new lower shell.
Okay.
But it's not new. So what we did, so I sent you a new one because since I first met you and got you a light, we tweaked the optics. So we changed the beam pattern a little bit. And it's another example of one of those things where we design it, we get it through production, we get it out in the field, and then we start getting more feedback, and we think, you know what, based on what we're seeing from people, we can make this better. So
what was the feedback there that people were given originally?
Basically, it was matching what we were seeing, where our simulations for the product, like cutting the mold for that, didn't quite line up with the output on the ground. And a little background on that: when you're designing optics, you have an optical model of the LED itself, which is essentially basically on a goniometer. Doesn't matter. You have an LED lit up, and the LED company is actually taking a picture of that LED from a really shallow angle, and then rotating up a little bit, and then rotating up a little bit, until you have a picture of that LED 360 degrees all the way around. And you can take more pictures at a finer pitch, every tenth of a degree, every 2 degrees, whatever, to get a better model. And we were using a model that had 1 million rays collected. So 1 million pictures taken of that point source. And what happens is that because it's not a true image of the actual product, it's a simulation, our beam pattern came out looking really good on the screen, and it came out a little bit tighter than we wanted in production. So the spot in the center, the transition from that spot out was not as smooth as we wanted, and it was a little bit small. So people basically focused on this tiny spot and there was not a good transition to the peripheral coverage. So they felt like they had tunnel vision, like a little pinpointed.
Okay.
So we decided to change the LEDs and tweak the optic. So, and we used a 10 million ray file this time instead of
Jesus.
1 million. And
like a million's not enough, right? Isn't that crazy?
And you can see it in the images too, where we took the same, like our first model, we put in the 10 million instead of a million, and like, oh, those are two totally different beam patterns. That explains it. And the LED companies publish those models publicly, but they only publish the low resolution ones. So thankfully, I asked some buddies at Cree, because I used to work there, can you go ahead and shoot me some higher resolution stuff, because we're actually going to use it. And it's completely changed the way we're doing this, because now we can model it and have the actual product be really damn close to it, which
so basically what you're saying is you'll still have the spot, but it kind of like diffuses out better instead of it being like a hard line between the spot and the diffused part.
Exactly. Yeah, that's the biggest change. And then something we also did a little bit was we made the beam a little bit more asymmetric, which is not something you'd notice or necessarily feel when you look at it. But the idea is we don't want as much scatter going up into the trees. So we kind of redirected that down in the center under the spot. So when you had Steve from Hardtail Party on here recently, he mentioned, he calls it like a cat's eye kind of thing, where you get the spot down the trail, but because further out down the trail is further away versus, the more down you look, the closer it is to you.
Right.
We just have a little tail of light coming down, but that ends up making it look like a vertical stripe of really even illumination down the trail. The idea is that the EVO on the bars is super wide, so that if you turn your bars back and forth, you're not seeing the spot bouncing across the trail, but it's very evenly illuminated. You don't see wild changes. And then the hangover gives you kind of this vertical stripe, so that they blend really well together. So you don't see like two spots running around. You just see kind of everything, and you don't necessarily notice where your helmet light is pointing. You're looking where you're looking, and that's what you see. So the idea is we just want it to be very, very even. And that was the primary difference.
Right on. And then you said you changed the lower part, so it's just that new material then.
Yep. Yeah, which
so then
tuck it another 2 millimeters closer to the helmet. We can make it a little bit thinner and kind of sculpt out that shape a little bit. Which lower the helmet it is, the less you feel it on your neck. It's subtle enough that it's hard to see like side by side, but it's 2 millimeters exactly.
Yeah, I noticed the like the little venting stuff was like a little different too. It looked like you kind of changed the way that happened.
Yeah, and part of that is because we realized we had some dead space inside the shell. The first, there you go. So first hanger on the left, camera left, versus the new one on the right with the red sticky tape thing. So the first one, we realized
a little smaller too.
Space inside where we wanted the top shell and the bottom shell to kind of just meld to the same profile. And so we added these dive chamfers on the sides of the hangover right here, so that the idea is that when you pick it up with your hands, you're picking it up at a smaller, like a thinner touch point. And because that's, space that we didn't need inside there. We didn't need that air cavity. And did the same thing on the bottom. And so we could cut those heatsink fins back a little bit too, because we didn't need that much venting area. Like we have plenty of thermal capability with what's on there. So it's, essentially just optimizing every one of those little facets.
But I feel like that chamfer that you put on the side, it also gives you like kind of a finger hold for if you're trying to adjust the light compared to the original one. And it's not something that I would have even really noticed until I'm like here holding them, next to each other. It's like, no, that's actually like ergonomically, it feels better. Like just to be able to grab it and be able to move where the light's pointing at.
Good.
Yeah.
I mean, that's of course we were going for. Yeah.
100%. Sure, that's what you were going for.
Yeah, it's designing stuff like this is fun because Matt does the mechanical design. We go back and forth on it, but he's the engine behind that. And some of this stuff we want it to look good. We want it to not look like a block of cheese. But ultimately, everything starts with some functional purpose. Like there's a reason that we make that change, and then we try to smooth it to make it look good. So like that chamfer could just be a straight cutout, but it would look kind of gross. So we, tried to make it look more like the Evo, have some common design language between them.
Yeah.
And something we incorporated into the detour as well. And so we're trying to be more thoughtful of not just the function, but also the form as we kind of refine our designs. Because everything we're doing is we're not necessarily, and we're making new products, but a lot of the existing products, we're not out there to say, all right, 3 years from now, this product no longer matters. It's, obsolete.
Mm-hmm.
We're just optimizing it. We're figuring out as we get more data, okay, this needs to change a little bit like this. We need to change this angle slightly and just make it a better, more thoughtful product all the way around.
Just to go over some things that I know we talked about before. When you first turn on your lights, the first setting is kind of like just let the computer inside of there handle it, and it'll be as bright as it can for as long as it can. And it kind of like slowly over time gets like dimmer and dimmer, right?
Yeah. So pretty much every bike light, not every, I'm generalizing, but most bike lights that people are going to be using from, common brands, Knight Rider, Light and Motion, and so on, they in their high modes, they start at max brightness and then they taper off.
Right.
And they don't have to do that. So what we did is we put in an adaptive mode, which is the first mode, that does that, but in a very controlled, deliberate fashion. So over the first 20 minutes, it tapers off a little bit faster, but still so slow that you don't notice it. And then it flattens off. The idea being that your eyes take a little bit to adapt to the darkness for your night vision to adjust, for your pupils to dilate. And you don't notice that change. And after about 20 minutes, that effect is basically set, like you're good. So we don't want it to continue tapering at the same rate because you're going to start noticing that drop. So if we flatten it off after that point, you don't feel the change from the initial turn on, but you're now getting 30% better runtime as a result. So really what we wanted to do with the modes is cover the two main bases of users, like enduro riders and cross-country riders. Generalizing, of course, but there's a lot of people that go out for night rides, and the types of trails they're on, it's up and down, and they're just moving, pedaling the whole time. You probably don't want to be constantly futzing with the light output. You just want it to be on the whole time. That's perfect for adaptive because you just turn it on and you leave it alone. And it.
So what's the battery life like in adaptive mode then? Like how long will it stay that way?
Yeah, like on Evo, it's 2.5 hours. And then all of the modes have a 20-minute get out of the woods where it'll trip down to low when it gets down to 5% battery. So it doesn't just shut off suddenly. It gives you some time on a lower output mode and then has a little death pulse for 10 seconds before it shuts off completely so that
nice.
You can know, hey, you're about to lose all your light. Please stop riding your bicycle. And
that's really good. I remember talking about that on the first episode, and it's like, or the first time we talked on, and just I've had lights shut off on me before, and not all, and it doesn't seem like it happens in a good spot, and so it basically your last 5 minutes it's gonna go down to like a walk mode, kind of like really dim, but like, hey, it's still on.
It'll go down to 20%, so it's not super dim, but you probably aren't going to be riding at 30 miles an hour down your fastest street.
You're going to notice it when it happens, and it's going to be like, oh shit, dude, I got 5 minutes, man.
Yeah. You'll notice the change and say, all right, I've got 20 minutes to get back to the car, but you're not going to just lose all the light and crash, which is the big thing. Like safety is very important with this because, like your derailleur gets ripped off, you can still ride, right?
Yeah.
You're not going to crash because of it necessarily, unless it gets sucked into your wheel. If your light shuts off and it's the only light you have, I mean, all bets are off, right? Yeah. So we try to design into the circuitry so that, like, if, like, say you get water in the light, the lights are waterproof. Shit happens though. You take a crash, you damage the shell. Now some water, whatever happens. we want to make it so that if there's water in the light, the fail-safe mode is not for the light to shut off. It's for it to stay on. So that maybe you can't turn the light off now, but that's better than having it off and not being able to turn it on. So we're trying to be really cognizant of that stuff from a safety standpoint so that you don't have to worry about that sort of thing, because like the worst case scenario in our previous lights, we had, an external battery pack. What's the one thing that fails the most on an external battery pack light? The connection between the battery and the light, wires. And those wires, if they start to fail and break contact, you lose power. Like it's going to shut off the light. So that's why we wanted to move. That's one of the main reasons we wanted to move to an internal battery pack light where everything's self-contained, because that can't happen. You can't lose the connection between the battery and the light because it's internal. So even if you're pass-through charging from a USB power bank, like to get longer runtime, if that power bank gets ripped off in a crash or something, the light stays on. So you're still good.
I forgot you can do that with your light too. So you can just hook a USB-C up to it and drop that in your bag and plug it into the light, and it'll charge it while you're riding it as well.
Yep. Yeah. And it, depending on it's Pandora's box with everything like this. Like,
right.
In an ideal world, you just pick up any power bank you find off Amazon or whatever, and you plug it in and it works perfectly forever. But we found some brands are better than others, and we can't be held responsible for Amazon cheap garbage. But like if you plug it in, then you'll get extended runtime, and it's just a matter of what type of, like, what modes you're running in and your use case. So that's our current products do that. Our next gen, we're definitely going to make it so that you can run the light dead, plug it into one of our packs, and run the light at full power from that. Instead of just,
so you're gonna have your own little power banks, basically.
Yeah, and we didn't want to release that. We didn't want to make another power bank that was the same as what already exists for less money from a bunch of reputable brands. So we just thought it would be kind of redundant, and it would be more expensive, and it would distract us. So we said, all right, we're not going to do that until we get the charging system to the point with the next generation where we can add some actual features that make more sense for this application. So yeah, we got some things coming.
That's really rad. I forgot about the battery pack thing, because now I'm like, well, shit, I got this freaking little, like, it's probably about the size of an iPad, but man, I could plug that thing into the light and I'd probably just stay on high all night long.
Yeah. For hangover, you pretty much can. For detour, you can in any mode with a QC 3.0 rating on a power bank, which is kind of standard, like brand agnostic rating. Yeah, it'll keep up with all modes. Evo, because it's higher power, you can get high maximum runtime to about 4 hours. And that's where it stays at 100%. So like those modes we were talking about a moment ago, high for us means it starts at 100% and it stays at 100% until it gets to, low battery condition. The idea being that you start a ride with a long climb, you put it on low for the 45-minute climb, and now you've got a 10-minute, 30-mile-an-hour descent. You put it on high, knowing that no matter what your battery level is at, you're getting maximum output, not wherever it is on the curve, right?
Right. So whatever so basically, those of you guys listening, you hit the button once, turns it on, it's in adaptive mode. So it's going to give you the brightest light it can until it's just about dead. But then there's like every other time you hit it, you then go to high, then you go to medium, then you go to low. And each one of those, you're saying it stays at that percentage until like 100, it stays there for sure until you get to low battery mode, which you said is about 20 minutes of low battery mode.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
Then right before that shuts off, it does blinky, blinky, blinky.
Yeah.
Like strobe light.
Like a slow pulse. So it doesn't like flash on and off. Like it goes from bright to dim for 10 seconds. So it's enough time so you can notice it and be like, oh, that means the light's about to die. I can hit the brakes, roll over the side of the trail, and then it shuts off.
Right. And you're going to, of course, at that point already be on like alert because it's already dropped down. So you're going to know like, okay, I'm in the danger zone. So if I start seeing it pulse, like, stop.
Exactly. Yep. Safety first or third or whatever.
Yeah, whichever place it falls in that night. Yeah, that's really interesting. Now I feel like I want to go out and test it.
Well, and that's the thing, right? It's totally user dependent. Like if you don't do like enduro style rides, then yeah, you just put it on adaptive, and that's the best option for you. But like
Yeah.
my Tuesday night rides, we ride in the place here in Olympia that's basically 500 feet max from top to bottom of any descent. But we just basically go up the hill, down the hill, up the hill, down the hill, and it's
Yeah.
a 15-minute climb to get to the top of the hill. So that means that for those 15 minutes, I don't need it on max power. So I go out there and ride for 2 hours every Tuesday, and I'm never dipping even into half the battery because I put it on low for the climbs, and then on the descents, I've got max power for the 5 minutes down or whatever, and
Yeah.
I'm good to go.
Yeah, it's kind of like what I did last night. I knew I was going to end up finishing in the dark. So I had the one for my helmet in my hip pack. And then I had the Evo on the handlebars. And I finished this one downhill section about the time that I needed a light. And at that point, I just turned the handlebar on like low, did this 20-30 minute climb. And then at that point, took the one out of my hip pack, put it on my head, and put them both on full blast, and then had the rest of the downhill back. So it was fun. It's been a while since I've been night riding, honestly, and obviously, I mean, I guess it's been a season. You know what I mean? And it was fun. It was definitely fun, and it was I think because it's been so long since I used your lights, like it reminded me of why I liked your lights. You know what I mean? Like you were talking about earlier, the problem with the cord, the Night Rider lights I had before, I've definitely, you have like to have a really bright light is what I would need to be able to get the optics that I need to ride, the way that I want to ride. And to do that, I would end up having one that had a cable, and you're riding through the woods, and some of you guys in Sedona probably don't have this problem, but like trees and shit grab that stuff. I mean, I've had my head yanked, and I've had the cable pulled out, like you were saying, and like also like that mount. And I don't want to just sit here and shit on Night Rider, but like that mount that they have, it just makes the light stick up so much further off the top of your helmet that your brain doesn't really think about it until you like snap your head backwards because it caught some limb,
Yeah.
And
well, you're used to ducking out of limbs at a normal level, and now at night you need to know to duck further, right?
yeah. And with yours, I mean, it's not much of a like, it doesn't go up very high. You guys kind of use your form factor to go more wide, and so I think it's just it doesn't happen as much. I definitely haven't like caught my head on your light compared to my Night Rider light. I used to do it all the time, and that's what that's even after years of using it and knowing that like, hey, you have to overly duck. It still would happen. So
for sure,
definitely.
Well, I mean, I'm not going to shit all over Night Rider either. Like this is the thing. Like there's options out there for people who like different things. And you expressed that to Steve too. Like the perfect product for you, we don't make yet. We will for the helmet. We're going to give you a more powerful helmet light, but right now our system isn't that, and we can fix that. And there's going to be some people that just prefer having an external battery pack because they like knowing that they've got this massive energy store somewhere else. They like being able to carry an extra one, maybe whatever. Yeah. And we're trying to address as many of those, basically everybody's concerns about everything with what we can, but we know that we're not going to be for everybody, and that's okay. Like that's why there's options out here.
I think for me, like your light is the perfect light unless I'm trying to like PR something. Like that's the only time. And that's what I said to Steve. I want to be clear.
Yes. Well, and I want to make some clarifications on this day. When you say want to PR something, that's you on your trails, which are really fast straight trails, right?
Yeah.
Like mobbing high speed straight line stuff. where the peripheral visibility is not as key. You need to see further out in front of you than the majority of people are ever going to need. So that means you need more power and more throw from your helmet.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's the product we don't have yet, but it'll be next year around this time.
I'm ready, man. I'm ready.
Yeah.
I'm super stoked to hear that. Like, honestly, because I thoroughly enjoy your product. I really do. It's not like, hey, I got this guy on my podcast, so I'm gonna tell him his stuff's great. Like I really like your product. I wouldn't say it if I didn't. And
I appreciate it.
Anytime anybody asks me about buying a light, it's like, yeah, these are the ones. Get these. And if they have something else that they're kind of using and they want to like just buy one, I usually tell them like I would just buy both of them. Like, just give your light away, or have it as a spare for your buddy, or a spare you can carry in your bag if your battery dies on your Evo or something. But like, just buy the combo pack and go, because it's hands down, out of all the lights that I've bought over the years, this is the best package. There's like no doubt about it to me. I love the fact that like the charging cable is just USB-C. It's super simple. Like, if you lock, it's not like it's some like proprietary connection or something. It's like wireless. The battery and everything's all in there. That the way that adaptive mode works is great. It just, and the beam patterns alone is where it's like really, I mean, that's what really makes it shine, honestly. So,
well, and you mentioned the USB, and I'm willing to say something about it because I saw somebody comment about it recently. Like, we designed the cables so that they're low profile when they're inserted, and that they're watertight, so that if you're using that pass-through charging, like from a power bank, to extend your runtime, the lights aren't vulnerable during that time. That means that not every single USB-C cable can fit in the light because of that waterproof interface. And so I had somebody giving me crap the other day because we've made a non-proprietary interface proprietary because of that. And I'll say two things about that. One, our USB cables are cheaper than anything else on the market because we don't want to make money off selling people USB cables. I don't want that to be a thing.
So you have like a really long one I could order, like a 3 foot long or something like that?
Yeah, they're all 42 inches, and we've got USB A to C, and we've got C to C cables. But we only charge $5 for them because we basically make no money on the cables. We don't care. That's not what our company exists for. We're not trying to make a proprietary thing. We just want it to be a standard USB thing, so you don't have to have a proprietary charger that you now have to only get from us and pay us a bunch of money for. And yeah, not every single cable, like Apple's 100-watt, laptop connector, it's too big to fit in the housing. Sorry, I'll send you a cable so you can have a spare somewhere else, and it'll be okay. So we'll tweak that kind of stuff, that geometry, in the future, because that's a complaint, that's legitimate. But I also just want to make it clear, like, and I think anybody that's ever dealt with me or us for customer service knows that, like, we're not trying to hook customers into buying something where they now have to come back to us for $15 accessory and then another $10 accessory. It's like, I don't have time for that shit. I want you to buy the lights.
Yeah.
I want those to cost money and to be good. And then everything else, like, I'll just give you a cable. That's fine. Just,
So the Hangover and the Evo, like, if you're talking about the mountain bike lights, if they were both on adaptive, they both last 2.5 hours?
No.
Okay, that's good.
I saw this comment. I just quickly scanned through the comments here on this live cast, and somebody was talking about having a 21700 in the Hangover. So we've got, in the Evo, we've got two 21700 size cells, which is a common lithium ion size cell. The nerds will know. And Hangover, we've got an 18650. So that's basically an 18650 is 40% less capacity than a 21700. We used the 18650 because that was much more available to us at the time. A lot fewer manufacturers of the bigger cells, and it also made the light lighter weight and smaller and a little bit less expensive. In the new light, that you will want next year with the higher output, you'll also put in a 21700. So it'll basically be half of an Evo in terms of weight, size, battery capacity, all of that, but it'll also be half the output. So it'll be exactly the same run times. That's the idea. But it's going to give you more punch down the trail than the Hangover will. So,
but for right now, the Hangover, how long does it last on adaptive mode?
1.8 hours. So just shy of 2 hours.
But the idea, I would assume then, is if you're using the Hangover, there's going to be points in your ride where you're turning it off, where the Evo would still be on, maybe on low or something like that, like you're climbing or something like that.
Yeah, and again, this comes back to like everybody's use case is different. I'm not going to say this is how you control it every ride, but as an example, when I'm doing my local Tuesday night rides on the climbs, I'm usually turning my helmet light off and just leaving it on, because I don't necessarily need to see. I don't need to be able to look to see around. I'm just looking at the 10 feet in front of me going slow uphill. If anything, I might put bar on medium and the helmet on low, and that'll be fine. And then I'll turn both of them on max output for the downhill. And you can kind of balance things out that way. Yeah,
I've even had like road climbs where you're like, it's a full moon or something, and I just turned both my lights off, my eyes adjust, and you're just riding on the road. You're like, I can see good enough, like just try to save your battery, because
those are the best type of rides too, when you're out there and it's just enough light for you able to see what's going on. And you're not in a super dangerous, like, covered in the canopy, like you can actually see. That's why the desert rides are awesome, when you get a full
man. I'm going to go off topic. I was in Pennsylvania a few weeks back, and I did that like classic. I think I can climb and get back down the hill before it gets dark.
Yep.
And not only did I decide to do this, but I also decided to do it in an area that I don't know the fucking trails.
Perfect.
Yeah. Let me tell you that I learned a new trick. It's called brake with your right hand and hold your iPhone with your flashlight on in the left hand. And that only works so far.
Oh man.
Especially when the woods are like super dense like they are back there. Oh my God, there's like no light in that. Like you turn your light off, and even letting your eyes adjust, you're like, I can barely see where the trail is. Like
I can't see my hand in front of my face, much less the trail.
I was definitely in one of those spots where I was like, okay, well, I know there's a road out to my right somewhere, and I just need to like turn and go that direction if I get to the point where like my phone was dying too. I was at like 5% on my phone, so I was like, I'm so screwed right now.
Can I see where I'm going, or do I need to be able to call for help in 5 minutes?
Right. Well, that was the other kicker. No signal. Dude, it could not have gotten any worse. So I'm trying to find this little trail that's like on Trail Forks. There's this little it was showing up as a red trail, so that's double black, right? Or double, So I'm like, look, I know at this point there's no way I'm going to be riding that trail, but I at least can take this, like if I have to slide down something on my rear end or whatever, I can take this to get over to the road, right? So at one point I find this spot that's like, here's the right hand turn, it must be that trail. And I go to like go out there and check it out, and instead of being the trail, it's like a viewpoint with like a cliff. So now I'm thinking like, oh God, I'm so glad I just didn't like go for it and like, oh, just step over here. Oh God, it was like the perfect like chain of events that just like all fell down on me at the same time.
Well, and it's those types of rides that start getting you thinking, do I need to bring a shock pump with me, an extra light, and maybe a spare crank, like, maybe some pivot bolts. I don't know.
Yeah, I'll tell you what. I mean, I almost impaled myself in my handlebars on that ride. There was so many things that went wrong on that ride, but the one thing, the biggest takeaway that I got from that ride was I'm going home and I'm getting that freaking Garmin Mini InReach thing, because this is just stupid. Like fortunately, whenever I had the accident that I had, I was okay. I mean, okay enough to keep riding and apparently do another climb. But it could have been one of those situations. I didn't even think about signal. You know, I was using my GPS to get to where I was going. I was using Trail Forks. And so in my mind, like my phone was working. And it wasn't until right before I did that last climb where I was going to beat the sun, I pulled my phone out to see what sunset was. And that's when I realized, I was like, dude, I have no signal here. Yep. Like, and then it was kind of like, oh shit, man. Like if that accident would have been worse, like I would have actually been laying there with like a handlebar through my stomach. Like, what would I have done? You know, like
probably died.
Yeah. Just laid there and hope that some dude freaking rides his bike by the next day and I'm still alive. You know what I mean? Like,
oh man.
Yeah. It was definitely one of those things where I'm like, all right, it's time for the Garmin to be purchased. So anyways, well, I do want to bring up one thing that I saw in the comments was, is that a Rivian you got in the background there?
It is.
How do you like it?
It's fucking amazing.
How long have you had it?
I've had it here for about a month now. We had it at our HQ in Chicago for a month, and then I flew out and then drove it back. So I got to drive from Chicago to Olympia in an electric vehicle, which was quite an experience. Wyoming does not have charging infrastructure. I say like zero. Like there are literally 3 chargers in the entire state that'll charge it, and I had to go down through Denver, like across Colorado, and then back up. It was,
oh wow,
it was great.
It was great.
But yeah, this will be my new demo vehicle. So I'm gonna stick a bunch of lights in the gear tunnel on a slide out tray with charging and all the accessories and things, and start showing up at stuff in the PNW up here and get people to test some lights out. But yeah, it's ridiculous.
Really like it though. All the trim and stuff like that inside, you like, it seems like it's all like everything's dialed. And...
I'm really, for a first offering, not even that. Like for any company, it's really well put together, very high quality. All of my complaints are little nitpicky things. All the major stuff they've freaking nailed, and it's even more impressive being like the first offering from a company. I think they'll be just fine. I
really want to get an electric vehicle, but I don't want to give up my pickup truck, you know? So there's only a couple of offerings. I mean, I guess Chevy just released theirs now, and Ford has their Lightning out, and then there's this one, and Tesla's thing looks like freaking, I don't know what. And, you know, so it's definitely nice to have some different options out there. This one's kind of like that mid-size truck, you know, almost like a Tacoma.
Yeah, it's so I had a Honda Ridgeline before this, and I got that specifically to be a shuttle vehicle. I mean, it was my daily driver, but like I also got it because I was going to use it as a shuttle vehicle a lot.
Right.
And it has like SUV suspension. You know, it's full suspension all the way around. It's unibody, so it's, you know, it's not a body on frame, so it's really stiff. It rides great. This truck is almost identical dimensions to the Ridgeline. So it's not a huge bed, but it's big enough that I can fit bikes in and still have 5 inches or so behind the rear tire. You know, I'm a tall guy, I got long bikes, and I still can fit long bikes in there. So I can use a tailgate pad. And it's comfortable. It's not hard to drive around parking lots because it's like massive with a huge hood you can't see over. So it's a good mid-size offering. It just, you know, thankfully we got in really, really early with the reservation. So before they jacked the price by 20 grand or whatever.
Oh, wow. It went up that much.
Yeah. It was like, I think it was 18. Don't quote me on that, but
yeah. Either way, a lot though. That's a lot. Yeah.
Yeah. They like somebody high up, like CFO or something of the company, had a public quote saying, yeah, I fought them on this because we never should have released it at the price it was. It was way too cheap. And then Rivian fought back and they're like, well, yeah, actually she's right. We can't afford to do it at this price. So how's the ground clearance?
The ground clearance is good.
Yeah. So my Ridgeline was like 8.5 inches. This in the lowest setting is 9.5, but it goes up to 15.5.
Oh, you can like on the fly?
It's got adaptive air suspension, so it's got a
Interesting.
compressor on board and everything. And so for like it's got a like off-road rock crawling mode where it puts it at 15.5 to give you best like departure angles and stuff like that. And then the sport mode is super low, and you can stiffen up the dampers, and
you just hit a button and then it changes.
Yep, you just select the modes.
Wow.
Yeah, technology is nice sometimes when it works.
Yeah,
it's pretty great.
Those things are they're the only thing that like makes me consider the Tesla one, even though I'm not crazy about the way it looks, is just their charging infrastructure is just amazing. Like they have chargers like everywhere.
Yeah, and that comes down to, kind of like the bike lights, honestly, like use case. If you're driving a lot outside of your state or to events or whatever, then that's a totally legitimate advantage. And thankfully, I think that there's enough pressure now that Tesla is going to start making their charging network available to others, not at max speed, but like something reasonable.
I heard something. My one buddy, or a couple of my friends are really into the Teslas, and they were mentioning that there's some kind of deal going. Like, I think they're getting some kind of federal like money for some other stuff so that they can build more chargers, but in turn, then let other people use theirs or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, that sounds right. I also think that Elon is a cuckoo town banana pants person, so I who knows what the hell he's going to do. And that'll happen until the last second, and then it won't, and it'll be because of Twitter somehow. I don't know.
Yeah. It'll be something like that, right?
Yeah, and the Ford Lightning looks like an awesome option. It's just big. It's just a full size truck. I'm assuming that both Ford and Chevy, like GM, they'll roll that into like the Ranger sized trucks.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking too.
Yeah, those will be.
I like the Lightning. I really do. The only thing that I was like kind of bummed about was that they did the rear suspension in a way that like you can't put a lift on it. So you could put a leveling kit on it and put a little bit bigger tires on it, but you can't lift it, at least not yet. I mean, my understanding though is like the video that I watched about it, like the guy was like, I don't know how they would do this. So that's kind of a drag. I mean, but I think at the end of the day, like to have a full size truck that's the same as mine, like because I have an F-150 right now. It's like, man, that's really tempting,
Yeah, and I charge at home, and I've got the level 2 charger. It's just the standard 240 outlet that I already had in here because I had wiring up for like a welder in the shop here, and it gives you like 20 miles of range or so per hour. It's not super fast, but whatever. It's charging overnight, and then every day the truck's topped off, and so I never need to mess with it. And the only time I needed to use public chargers was getting it from Chicago back here, and then we drove up to girlfriend and I drove up to Whistler a few weeks ago, just before closing weekend, and had to charge once in Bellingham on the way up. But that was pretty much it.
The main reason for me in the chargers that I'm like my concerns is we ride up in the mountains a lot. And so it'll seem like to get up there, you end up like burning almost most of your battery, or to the point where like you won't have enough to get home, so you have to like charge somewhere up there to maybe overcharge to get till you get to where you're going and then be able to make it back or something. So
this is the nice thing about EVs too, is that what goes up must come down, and regenerative braking. Like you're not using any fuel at all on the way down. You're essentially gaining range from the top of the hill down. And there was a couple of times where it was like it'll plot out, all right, you need to stop. You're trying to get here 10 hours away. You need to stop here for 20 minutes to charge, here for 30 minutes, whatever. And you'll have this much range when you get there. You'll say you've got like 40 miles of range left when you arrive at this charger. There's a couple of times where I was already below 40 miles and I was not close to the thing. And it was because I was at the top of this mountain range. I burned all this power to get there. And by the time I got there, I had more range than they expected. And it was a little was concerning because I was seeing that low number. It's like, I'm too far away. But, they think about that stuff, I guess.
I would imagine with your truck, it's probably a little better though, too, because my buddy he has the, whatever the Tesla car one is, it's like the bigger one, not the 3, the Y, I think.
Yeah.
And once you put the bikes on the back, it doesn't predict its mileage as well. But I would assume though with the Rivian, because the way that the bikes are on the tailgate, then it's probably not really like making more drag where it throws it off.
Yeah, it's not as big of a difference, right? It's not a sail hanging off the back of the car.
Yeah.
So yeah, having them in I had a rack on there briefly, but the tailgate pad works great. And I haven't towed anything with it yet. Obviously, towing is gonna kill range. So I don't know if that's the best application for these just yet, but for everything I'm gonna be, it's gonna be great.
Yeah, I did see them do some video on YouTube where they were like towing some trailer and they did it up against like the Raptor and like a Dodge or something like that, and they just smoked the shit out of them.
Oh man, that's a Haggerty video with Jason Camisa where it's the Rivian versus the Dodge TRX, which is like a 750 horsepower truck, whatever, and it just smokes
the Raptor.
I don't want to ruin it for anybody, but yeah, that's a great video.
I don't care. I'm going to ruin it. Then they put the fucking Dodge on the trailer and smoked them they put the Ford on the trailer because the Dodge was the one that was still hanging. And then they, pulling the Ford, still smoked the Dodge. Oh my God, it was amazing.
Yeah, electric vehicles are stupid. Like there's a launch mode in this where you just put your foot on the brake, put your foot on the gas, and you let off the brake, and it just launches. And it does something physical to your body that it's hard to put into words unless you drive race cars. Like because it just keeps pulling and like, oh, I'm at 100 and it's still pulling. It's like it makes you all shaky and stuff.
They're stupid fast, man. I mean, my buddy he doesn't even have the performance one, and that thing will throw your head back. Yeah. I mean, it's not like it moves like a Honda Civic or something. Like that thing still is like, it's the quote, like air quotes, those you listening, slow one. And it's still like, dude, this thing's no joke, man.
Yep. I think that aside from the Nissan Leaf, pretty much every electric vehicle that's been released since then is faster than in the slowest version of those is faster than any vehicle I've ever owned before this point.
Yeah.
And this one is not a slow version. It's plain stupid. So I'm enjoying it quite a bit.
Yeah, the only thing that keeps me like from pulling the trigger tonight is my truck's paid for right now. So it's like I keep looking at it. I'm like, well, this is going to be $1,000 a month payment, or something like that. And am I spending more than that on gas right now? No. And until that number or until that like time comes, or I'm just tired of fixing shit on my truck, which is a possibility, that then I'm gonna definitely pull the trigger. I'm like, in my mind, I'm just trying to like maybe hold on to my current truck long enough for like Rev 2s of things to start coming out, and then be like, okay, now I'm stoked, or whatever.
I think you're in a good spot too, because with like interest rates going up right now and like, car prices crashing, it might be a good time to get a new vehicle with the prices crashing as the supply comes back, but interest rates are going through the roof. So if you can hold on to your car with no debt and no payments and wait for that next iteration, there's going to be a ton of options in like 3 years. Holy crap. It's pretty much every manufacturer has said, oh yeah, we're going to have like 40 new models in the next 10 years. Like,
and all the battery tech just keeps changing, man. That's the big one too. So it'll be like, I'm sure the range is just going to keep going up and up and up. So that'll be rad. So who knows?
Well, and if there's any nerds listening, Lucid, that makes the Lucid Air EV, they have some tech talks on YouTube also. And they have one on battery technology where they basically go into all their technology in the battery pack that gives them the advantages for heating, for cooling, for range, for the stability, for the structure. It's really in depth and it's super cool because there's so much that goes into those vehicles to make them as simple as they are.
Yeah, it's crazy. That is the one thing though. It seems like every one of the companies is like, we have this battery tech coming out that's going to be like twice as much range as everybody else, and you're like, all right, which one of you guys is actually like legitimately working on this? And the rest of you guys are just saying that shit to get like stock spot or something.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing. Like there's definitely innovation and technology that makes a big difference. But a lot of it is like that, right? It's proprietary because they're the only ones using it, but not because it's actually twice as good. It's just a thing. And when I hear like, oh, we have technology that like, how about you explain that technology to me rather than give me a buzzword name for it, which we decided not to. So the material we're using for the lower shells now, we didn't put some fancy like trademarked name on any of that shit because it doesn't matter. Like it just needs to work and work better. And it's not a marketing thing. It's an engineering thing. We did it because functionally we needed this material to do certain things. And I get really, I don't know. I just get really sour when I hear all these terms getting tossed around saying, yep, this is the technology that's going to be a game changer. And it's all this flowery language and no, actual scientific explanation for what's happening. So yeah. Skepticism is good sometimes.
100%. So here we are, 2 hours, man. Where can people get your stuff at?
Outboundlighting.com. And we support local bike shops too, but we're still small. So not every bike shop has our stuff. We will be putting a list of dealers on our website. We've probably got 125 shops around the country right now. In the meantime, if you're not sure if your shop carries our stuff, go ask them and then tell them that they should, and then to just reach out to us and we'll get that set up.
100%. So you guys do a bunch of events too. You guys doing I know I would assume you're going to Sea Otter again.
Yep, I'll see you at Sea Otter. We got one more big event this year, 25 Hours of Frog Hollow down in St. George Hurricane area in Utah.
What do they do there?
All-night race.
Sweet. That sounds fun.
I mean, it's like 24 Hours Old Pueblo. We'll also be back there next year as the lighting sponsor. And basically any of these 24-hour races, we're doing, neutral race support. So if you have any lights of any brand, we've got a charger. I've got spare parts, like whatever happens during the race, you come find me and I get you fixed up and send you back out.
Right on, man. You guys are doing Sedona too, or?
We'll be at Sedona Mountain Bike Fest. Got to figure out a house for that because that's already booking up.
Just saw that. I was thinking about that too. I need to get my shit together. So,
yep.
Do you guys do any other big festivals other than those two, or?
Bentonville Bike Fest will be in, I think, May next year. They're moving the date up earlier, so it's not as swampy. And that one, I mean, Sedona will be at forever because it's just unique and awesome. It's a good demo place. And vendor area. Bentonville takes it a totally different approach, and it's like nonstop entertainment. There's flatland BMX shows, there's trials competitions, there's enduro races, there's music, there's interviews with pro racers. Like there's something every 30 minutes all day for the entire festival. So that's a good one to check out if you want to travel somewhere unique. But I don't have their calendar in front of me, but we'll be at a couple of other big festivals and then a few random races throughout the year. We'll be at 24 Hours of Enchanted Forest with Zia Rides out in New Mexico. And
do you guys do you have like an event schedule on your website people could check out? And so if they wanted to come see something, touch it, and if they don't sell them, in their local area or something like that? Yeah,
we do. We haven't updated it yet for 2023. So I'm in the process right now of trying to nail down dates for a lot of stuff. Like Unbound Travel out in Kansas. We'll be at Unbound next year because Detour and Hangover will be a good light combination for that. And there's a lot of people that are out there all night long because it's an insane race. But we'll have a page on the website for the van adventures where I'll take the Sprinter out and show up with lights and parts and
Perfect, man. Well, anybody listening, I'm going to predict it right now that we do some kind of night ride in Sedona. So I'll definitely be there with you and your crew, and we'll do something. Last time we had a really good ride there, so it was a really good time.
Yeah, we try to do a demo ride for we usually do like 30 people or so, and then like 75 show up.
Yeah, right.
Figure it out. We usually do a demo ride Friday nights at Sedona Mountain Bike Festival, and then if there's people that want to just take a set out and try them to see them in the wild on their own on a Saturday or something, we can arrange that. Just come by. I'll be the one there at the booth. So
sweet.
We can make it work.
Dude, always super fun chatting with you, man. Had a great time.
Yeah,
I truly appreciate the time that you took to sit down with us, and honestly, like, knowing more and more about your product and how it works, it just reinforces what I already knew is you guys have a great product, and it's it will, I'm sure we'll have more conversations in the future about you guys continuing to double your size. So
I hope so. Always happy to talk, and whether it's about 3D printing or electric vehicles or anything else. So yeah, good hanging, man.
Sweet, man. Well, appreciate everybody out there. If you're still listening, thank you very much. I really appreciate that. Do hit the thumbs up if you're on YouTube. Maybe throw a comment down there. Subscribe if you want to see some more. If you're listening to the podcast, like I said at the beginning, write me a review. It really helps. Let's see if we can get to that number 5 spot. And if you want to do none of that and just something on just one thing I want you to remember is it only takes a bike to be a biker. So get out and be one.